Have you ever wondered how far a company would go just to sell bananas? It sounds like the setup to a joke. But what if I told you that a fruit as ordinary as a banana once held so much power it led to real wars, shaped governments, and changed the history of entire nations? This is the story of the Banana Wars, a strange, little known chapter in global history where the pursuit of profit turned into military conflict. And yes, it all started with bananas. Let's rewind the clock to the late 1800s. At that time, bananas were a luxury in the United States. They were exotic, sweet, and cheap to grow in the tropical climates of Central America. As transportation improved, bananas quickly became more than a curiosity. They became a commodity, a fast-selling, highly profitable product. Enter the United Fruit Company, an American corporation that saw more than just profit in bananas. They saw power. United Fruit didn't just buy bananas from local farmers. They bought the land itself. Thousands of acres across countries like Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, and Nicaragua. They built railroads to move the bananas. They built ports to ship them. They even influenced local governments to pass laws that favored their business. In these regions, United Fruit became more than just a company. It became a shadow government. It had its own infrastructure, its own labor force, and even its own armed guards. In some towns, the company's authority was stronger than the local government. So what happens when a company gains that much control? The answer is chaos. Workers were often underpaid and overworked. Locals saw their land taken, their leaders bribed, and their voices silenced. When protests or strikes happened, United Fruit responded harshly, and when that wasn't enough, they had powerful friends. That's when the United States government stepped in. Under the banner of protecting American interests abroad, the U.S. military intervened in Central America multiple times from the late 1800s into the 1930s. These interventions came in many forms, sending troops, backing coups, installing puppet governments, all to keep the banana business running smoothly. In fact, the U.S. Marines were deployed to countries like Honduras, Nicaragua, and Haiti more than a dozen times during this period. These weren't just diplomatic visits. They were full-scale occupations that sometimes lasted years. In some cases, the U.S. helped overthrow democratically elected leaders simply because they threatened the profits of United Fruit. This wasn't just business. This was empire building, one banana at a time. The term Banana Republic was born from this era. It described countries whose governments were so dependent on foreign corporations, especially in agriculture, that they had little real control over their own policies. It became a symbol of corruption, exploitation, and foreign domination. Let's take a real example. Guatemala, 1954. United Fruit owned nearly half the country's arable land, but used only a small portion of it. The rest was left idle, while locals struggled to find land to farm. When the democratically elected president, Jacobo Arbenz, passed a law to redistribute unused land, including some owned by United Fruit, the company panicked. They lobbied the U.S. government, claiming Arbenz was a communist threat. This was during the Cold War, so that word carried weight. The CIA launched a covert operation called Operation PBS Access, training and arming rebels to overthrow the Guatemalan government. And it worked. The Arbenz government was toppled, and a military regime took over, one that was friendly to United Fruit. What followed was decades of instability, violence, and civil war in Guatemala, all of it over bananas. But the influence of United Fruit didn't stop at politics. It crept into American culture too. In the 1940s and 50s, United Fruit launched major advertising campaigns portraying bananas as the perfect family fruit, clean, healthy, and wholesome. They even invented a cartoon character called Chiquita Banana who sang cheerful songs about how to eat and store bananas. It was cute. It was colorful. It was marketing genius. And behind the smiling fruit mascot, a company that had helped topple governments, bribe politicians, and shape foreign policy. The contrast between image and reality was staggering. Over time, journalists and historians began exposing the darker side of the banana trade. Public pressure grew. The United Fruit Company changed its name to Chiquita Brands International, hoping to move on from its past. But in countries like Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua, the legacy of those decades remains. Some historians argue that the Banana Wars laid the foundation for the political instability that still affects parts of Latin America today. The deep mistrust of U.S. intervention, the legacy of foreign controlled industries, and the struggles for land reform, they can all be traced back, in part, to this fruit driven empire. And here's the strange irony: bananas aren't even native to the Americas. They were brought from Southeast Asia, a tropical outsider, and yet they changed the entire landscape of Central America. Today, we buy bananas for pocket change. We see them in cartoons, cereal ads, and school lunches. We don't see the violence, the power struggles, the coups. But history remembers. The story of the Banana Wars isn't just about fruit. It's about how something seemingly small, something sweet and harmless, can become a symbol of exploitation, a weapon of soft power, a mask for something much darker. So the next time you peel open a banana, remember, behind that cheerful yellow skin lies a history full of struggle, ambition, and empire. And that is the true story of the Banana Wars.